This whole concept that people who are caregivers, that you're some kind of hero, is actually a disservice because heroes don't need help. We all need help. This is where platforms like CareYaya come in. A lot of people would look at what CareYaya does as a disruptive innovation. And I would say that as a society, we need to allow ourselves to think in an innovative, disruptive way and not worry about protecting the status quo, because the status quo is what got us here.
Welcome to the Future of Caregiving, the podcast where tomorrow's care meets today's voices.
Dr.
Senator Gale
is a
Adcock,
board-certified neuropsychologist at Harvard over 20,000 patients.
Award-winning Alzheimer's and
distinguished palliative care physician at Mass General Hospital.
Join us as we explore how innovation and compassion are reshaping caregiving's landscape. Today, we are joined by the one and only Senator Gale Adcock. Not only does she represent the 16th District in the North Carolina Senate, but she has also been a family nurse practitioner for 37 years and has experience as a registered nurse in a nursing home and as a public health nurse providing in-home care. All right, we are back with Senator Adcock. Thank you for joining us today, Senator. It is lovely to chat with you and get some of your insights on this. If y'all, our listeners at home, would like to learn a little bit more about how government and businesses can support family caregivers, tune into the first part of this episode. It's already been posted. Again, thank you for joining us today. I would love to talk to you a little bit about your background in nursing and being a nurse practitioner, and just in general, some strategies of how you think we can inspire the younger generation to start pursuing careers in the healthcare field.
Wonderful.
Great. So what can we do to help some of these younger kids begin to pursue careers in healthcare?
So this is one of my favorite questions. Thank you for asking it. I certainly don't think I have all the answers. In fact, I know I don't. I don't think anybody does, or this problem would be solved. It's also not an easy problem, or this problem would be solved. So let's acknowledge on the front end that it's going to take time, that it's not simple. We might make a few mistakes along the way, because anytime you try something new, you have to give yourself permission to not get it 100% right. Because if you wait until you think you can get it 100% right, then that attempt to have perfection is the death of progress.
You'll be waiting your whole life.
That's exactly right. So there is no perfect. Let's get over that. So I think kind of from a societal point of view, it's really important that we all, as a society, not just as individuals, recognize that the work that caregivers give, whether you're licensed or not licensed, is challenging, difficult work and work worth doing. You need to acknowledge that and respect that. And I think sometimes in healthcare, we look for the sexy stuff, right? The emergency room, critical care, being in a high specialty. And we tend to not think it's so valuable to take care of the elderly, whether they're in a home setting or a nursing home or assisted living, when these are people who've contributed to our society, to our culture, to our economy for a long time. And some of this means changing some of our attitudes and changing some of the way we look at people as they age. Because if you talk to anybody in their 80s or 90s, they'll tell you they often feel invisible. Well, when you're invisible as a person, then your needs are invisible as well. And people don't take your problem as seriously. So I think that's one thing we can work on together. I think we need to begin talking about careers in general, but certainly careers in healthcare, whether that's as a nurse practitioner, a nurse or physician, physical therapist, pharmacist, dentist, or whether that's as someone who works with people in their homes or other settings. We need to begin those conversations earlier and talking about the options out there with and without going to college. Because what we understand now is not everybody's made for college, not everybody even wants to go to college, but they do need some training and education after high school to allow them to have meaningful work that gives them the opportunity to support themselves and their family, have a home, have the things in their life that adds quality to their life. And so I think those conversations need to start in early middle school, if not earlier. And now, we kind of have waited until kids were in high school. You get to be sophomore or junior and say, oh, what do you want to be? And then sometimes it's too late. You haven't taken enough science, right? You haven't taken biology, and here you are a junior. And so you're hamstrung. And so I think that those conversations happening earlier and laying out some of the many options that young people have these days, for both in the caregiving field as well as others, could help them make some decisions, and also to change the narrative about what comes after high school. and to not in any way denigrate folks who choose not to go to college or not to go to college right away. Because there's so many other ways to get that training and education that does not require a 4-year degree.
100%.
And look at what kind of work people do after they get out with certain degrees and what kind of money they make and what their career trajectory is. And that'll just prove that point. I think we need to offer caregiving programs closer to home. I think community colleges are low-hanging fruit for this, because if you're trying to recruit caregivers in rural, underserved communities, and you can help young people who already live in those communities to stay home and honor their rural roots and continue to grow there, that it would be extremely helpful. So we need to support our community college system. I think we need attractive wages for this kind of work that reflect the challenge of the work. So those would be some of the low-hanging fruit things that I would say.
That was all super, super insightful. As a former pre-health student myself, I honestly hadn't even considered the careers in palliative care and hospice and gerontology. Like, those weren't even things that I'd even thought about, because no one had really spoken to me about these opportunities. And, I think it's so beautiful that companies here like CareYaya are making it so much more accessible for students to be interacting with people from 3-4 generations away from them. Like, it's such an inspiring thing to be able to interact with people who came so far before you. And we actually recently had another podcast guest. Dr. Alexis Druchis is a palliative care doctor at Mass General Hospital, and she also teaches Harvard University. And she was saying how there's nobody really wants to enter these fields because there's not nearly enough exposure for them.
Well, they say, you have to see it to be it. Absolutely. You have to see it to even understand it's out there.
So how can we, support the next generation of healthcare professionals? Any specific advice you would like to give these pre-health career students?
Well, I think that as individuals to value the work that they do, to not say, oh, is that what you do? Oh, if you don't have a license, it's not worth doing, or something like that. I think we have to embrace the fact that people find joy in different ways of working and living their life. And so to be accepting of that, I think that's one thing we can do as individuals. I also think that we can bring along both our colleagues, our contemporaries and our ages, and also the people young. I mean, even at your young age, you have folks younger than you that now that you have graduated from college and you have achieved this goal, is to not just say, okay, I've got mine and I'm going to climb the ladder, but to reach over and give a hand to folks both like you and unlike you, and show them what you do. Talk about it, and talk about it in good terms. I'm not talking about not being honest, but I think when people, when you're sitting around a table, got some young people in the group, and all they hear about are the problems, they're thinking to themselves, I don't want to do that. So if you will balance those conversations with, here are my challenges and here are my joys. And here's why this work is worth doing. And let me tell you a story about what happened yesterday and why this keeps me going to work every day, because I made a difference in somebody's life. And I don't care whether you work in a garage or you work in a department store or you teach or you're working in somebody's home. Everybody wants to feel like their life makes a difference, and that what they're doing is helping somebody else as well as themselves. You got to have a sense that you have value in making a contribution in this life. I will tell you, as someone who's been a nurse for a very long time and a nurse practitioner for 37 years, that I can't imagine going to work every day and not believing that what I was doing was making a difference. It would be hard to get up and go to work every day. So I think a lot of that lies with the conversations that we have about the work we do and about the work other people do that we see. And we need to talk about it being good work worth doing.
Absolutely. Wow, you've honestly inspired me to go back to school myself. That was really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, here at CareYaya, we are hoping to inspire like the next generation of healthcare workers, because it's tough work. And even though it is tough work and it might be a difficult road to get there, but we're trying to give the students like a viewpoint of how beautiful and amazing and inspiring it is.
Let me add to that then, as you talk about the advice to the students, is that just because something's difficult doesn't mean you shouldn't try it. When you understand that every day is not going to be a picnic, and you're not going to be perfect at everything, and you're not going to be 100% comfortable all the time, because you're going to have to continue to stretch yourself as new technologies come online, as new challenges arise, and that's okay. right? Nobody's expecting perfection. They're expecting your best effort. And that's what you need to give. I would just say in the conversations I'm having with a social worker friend of mine is that this whole concept that people who are caregivers, whether you're a licensed caregiver, a companion caregiver, whatever kind, that you're some kind of hero is actually a disservice to all of us because heroes don't need help. We all need help.
Absolutely.
And we have to be able to tell people, I've had a bad day. I'm sad about this. I lost somebody I've been helping to take care of for 3 years and they died today. And I need to say that. And I need a couple of days off to get my head straight and to grieve and not to think that not talking about it and not feeling it deeply is some heroic thing. That's not a hero. And so I think we need to talk about our caregivers as humans who have feelings and who take that home with them. And that doesn't make them weak. That makes them good. And that's where the heroic part comes from.
That doesn't make them weak. That makes them good. Really makes me want to put it on a t-shirt.
And make a great bumper sticker.
It sure would. It sure would. Yeah, that's such an important thing to say, honestly, because there's going to be challenges no matter what road you choose to take. And as long as you're taking every day step by step and just taking it one day at a time, you're doing a great job. I know you mentioned that you're a family nurse practitioner, so I just wanted you to really quickly, if you can, share some of your thoughts about accessible primary care for the family caregiver and how can that help people that are caring for someone in their family with serious illness?
Well, this is another question that I enjoy because having been in family practice for all of the time I was at SAS, it was family practice at work, but it was nonetheless transgenerational family practice. Here's what I know. When caregivers don't take care of themselves, their health, their physical health, and their mental health will suffer. And then, therefore, the person they're caring for is in a precarious situation. So, caregivers cannot afford to let the attention to their own health slide. They need to make sure that they're taking medications that they're prescribed for them, for instance, for their high blood pressure, their type 2 diabetes, their hypothyroidism, whatever their issues are. They need to have their regular preventive care checkups so that if they're at risk for a problem, so they can try to mitigate that if they can, prevent it certainly, mitigate it, or at least push it down the road so not a type 2 diabetic at 50, maybe they'll be 70, so they won't have their heart attack till they're 80 or 85, or something else. It's not selfish for them to take the time to take care of their own healthcare needs because by being the healthiest they can be, they're in a position to do the most for the person that they care for and care about. It's not some great sign of strength to not have visited your healthcare provider for 5 years and not take your blood pressure medicine because you haven't had time to go to the drugstore. That's not the way to go. And so we need to understand that caregivers need care too. We need to, as a society, understand that. And, this is where platforms like CareYaya come in, where you're providing that companion care so people can actually get both the health care they need, but also the downtime they need, because they need time to also be themselves and not just be the caregiver 24/7, 365. You've got to have a life that's rich and full as much as it can be.
Absolutely, as well as, engaging with the thousands of students that we have on the platform. One of my other roles here is that I speak with all of our patient advocates, and they're usually family caregivers themselves. And I always tell them, if you're not taking care of yourself, who's going to take care of your loved one?
That's right, because if something bad happens, if you don't take care of your high blood pressure and you have a stroke and now you're disabled, or it could kill you, but more likely to leave you disabled. Who's going to take care of your loved one? So it's not selfish. It's thinking ahead. It's part of the plan. Going back to how do we talk about these things. So I was a home care nurse for a long time. So when I went in to visit the patient, I didn't just say, "How is Mr. Jones doing?" He's the patient. I would say to Mrs. Jones, "How are you doing?" Now sometimes I would do that not in front of Mr. Jones because they needed the opportunity. They didn't want Mr. Jones, the husband, to worry about them, but they needed to say to me, "Well, I haven't slept in 2 days," or "I think I might have diabetes myself because I'm drinking a lot and I'm losing weight, I'm eating all the time." I mean, that family is the patient. I don't care whose name's on the chart. Family is your patient, your client.
100%. Yeah, our number one motto here is to empower family caregivers. So that's really inspiring to hear all of the things that you have to say. Any other last minute thoughts or anything that you would like to lay onto our caregivers and our students?
Well, I think I would say this just in closing. There was a Harvard Business Review article, Will Disruptive Innovation Save Healthcare? So this whole idea of disruptive innovation, a lot of people would look at what CareYaya does as a disruptive innovation, only disruptive in the way that it disrupts the way things are currently done. Not disruptive that it harms anyone, but just disruptive in the way of thinking and in the model. And I would say that as a society, as businesses, as caregivers, as legislators, as any kind of problem solver, we need to allow ourselves to think in an innovative, disruptive way and not worry about protecting the status quo because the status quo is what got us here. Right. And so we give ourselves permission to think in an innovative, disruptive way and not see that as the enemy. And so I applaud y'all for doing what you're doing because you saw a need, you really saw a need on two sides of the equation, and you are that equal sign in the middle, right? You're filling this great need that maybe 5 years ago people knew the problem, but they didn't have a way to think about a solution. And so the way your model looks now might be a little different than it looked 6 months ago, and it might be different more in a year. And so you give yourself the opportunity to say, okay, we're going to be live and responsive, and we're going to change as we see that we need to. And that's not failure, that's progress.
Thank you so much for being here with us, Senator. It was absolutely a pleasure to get to know you a little bit better, and I'm sure that every single person is going to find this podcast extremely insightful. So thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for joining Future of Caregiving. Together with CareYaya, we're transforming caregiving through compassion and innovation. Subscribe and join us, and together, let's build a better future for care.